Hey folks, thanks for watching my monologue. I'd like to encourage you to visit Guns Etc. They're strong supporters of our president and the principles our country was founded upon. Guns Etc. is 10,200 square feet and it's a firearm lover's paradise. And for all your online firearms needs, just click on gunsetcetera.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks. Well, welcome, Friday, March 20th, 2020. We find ourselves at the end of a week of deeply anxious causing news. You bet we've been worrying about the China virus for a few weeks now, but this week things ramped up. I don't know what next week will bring. We are told over and over we will get worse numbers as more and more people are being tested. And, of course, already our cable channels running the daily and hourly tolls, minus the one thing we keep asking for, the numbers of those who have had the virus and recovered. I can't tell if this is due to an effort to create consternation or if it is due to an effort to have us not underestimate the direness of the situation and encourage complacency. But if we all think we are operating in a realm of not enough information, let's have it all and allow us to be mature enough to assimilate the information as best we can and choose, minus government emergency edicts, how we Americans can think and act. To that end, here are the latest numbers I have. In the United States, we are pushing up against 19,000 cases, 237 deaths, and 125 recoveries. Of the near 17,000 cases, of the near 19,000 cases, well over 90% are considered mild. Could they get worse? Sure. Could they top or level out? Look, all is unknown. So, of course, the most caution is the best advice I give and accept. I presume, after all, that the doctors know more than I and that we should listen to our doctors. Right now, our national doctors are Jerome Adams, Deborah Birx, and Anthony Fauci. I mentioned this, too, yesterday, and I've been asked to mention it again. I think it's smart. It's from Dr. John Ioannidis, professor of medicine, of epidemiology and population health, of biomedical data science, and of statistics at Stanford University, and co-director of Stanford's Meta Research Innovative Center. Smart man. He writes, "The data collected so far on how many given people are infected and how the epidemic is evolving are utterly unreliable. Given the limited testing to date, some deaths and probably the vast majority of infections due to the virus are being missed. We don't know if we are failing to capture infections by a factor of 3 or 300. 3 months after the outbreak emerged, most countries, including the U.S., lack the ability to test a large number of people, and no countries have reliable data on the prevalence of the virus in a representative random sample of the general population. The one situation where an entire closed population was tested was the Diamond Princess cruise ship and its quarantined passengers. The case fatality rate there was 1%, but this was largely an elderly population in which the death rate from the virus is much higher. Projecting the Diamond Princess mortality rate onto the age structure of the U.S. population, the death rate among people infected with the virus would be 0.125%. But since this estimate is based on extremely thin data, there were just 7 deaths among the 700 infected passengers and crew. The real death rate could stretch from 5 times lower, 0.025%, to 5 times higher, 0.625%. It's also possible that some of the passengers who were infected might die later, and that tourists may have different frequencies of chronic diseases, a risk factor for worse outcomes with the infection than the general population. Adding these extra sources of uncertainty, reasonable estimates for the case fatality ratio in the general U.S. population vary from 0.05% to 1%. This is rational, and it sounds right. It could also be wrong, and as the professor also admits, and death could also increase based on how we handle this from other events and diseases due to lack of resources. So let's be operational pessimists and theoretical optimists, I say. That does not get us to the economy quite yet, does it? I don't really like saying we have to worry about the economy because it sounds cold, and it shouldn't. The root of the word economy is from the Greek oikonomia, which means household management. And whenever I think or talk of the economy, that's what I think of: families and households, communities. The reason I'm an economic conservative is because of this very view. Barry Goldwater put it well in his landmark book, The Conscience of a Conservative. He wrote, "Conservatism is not an economic theory, though it has economic implications. The shoe is precisely on the other foot. It is socialism that subordinates all other considerations to man's material well-being. It's conservatism that puts material things in their proper place, that is a structured view of the human being and of human society in which economics play only a subsidiary role. The root difference between the conservatives and the liberals of today is that conservatives take account of the whole man, while the liberals tend to look only at the material side of man's nature. The conservative believes that man is, in part, an animal creature, but that he is also a spiritual creature with spiritual needs and spiritual desires. What is more, these needs and desires reflect the superior side of man's nature and thus take precedence over his economic wants. Conservatism, therefore, looks upon the enhancement of man's spiritual nature as the primary concern of political philosophy. Liberals, on the other hand, in the name of a concern for human beings, regard the satisfaction of economic wants as the dominant mission of society." But on this, Goldwater continues. He writes, "The conservative has learned that the economic and spiritual aspects of man's nature are inextricably intertwined. He cannot be economically free or even economically efficient if he is enslaved politically. Conversely, man's political freedom is illusory if he is dependent for his economic needs on the state." Close quote. This could have been taken from Adam Smith or Aristotle. As we are reminded, Adam Smith was first and foremost a professor of moral philosophy, and his economic analysis was in a sense a byproduct of his concern with such questions as the nature of the universe, the nature of man, and the relationship of individuals to society. And Aristotle's book, The Politics, opens with the necessity of the creation of the state as prior to the family so as to organize the right kind of place for the growth and raising and flourishing of the family. As Adam Smith puts it, quote, "The property which every man has in his own labor, as it is the original foundation of all other property, so it is the most sacred and inviolable. The patrimony of a poor man lies in the strength and dexterity of his hands, and to hinder him from employing this strength and dexterity in what manner he thinks proper, without injury to his neighbor, is a plain violation of this most sacred property. It is a manifest encroachment upon the just liberty both of the workman and of those who might be disposed to employing him." So when it comes to the economic concerns of our response to the China virus, this is what I have uppermost in my mind. Not our pocketbooks, but the effect on our pocketbooks and wallets and all else that relate to our best and deepest interests. Thus my worry from the Wall Street Journal editorial page as it was written today: no society can safeguard public health for long at the cost of its overall economic health. Even America's resources to fight a viral plague aren't limitless, and they will become more limited by the day as individuals lose jobs, businesses close, and American prosperity gives way to poverty. Close quote. To this end, I was reminded of what Lincoln said by a piece from the great Carl Cannon. It was near the end of a Milwaukee speech in 1859 that Abraham Lincoln mentioned an old Persian saying he attributed to ancient sages. They presented him with the words, "And this too shall pass." How much it expresses, Lincoln added. How chastening in the hour of pride, how consoling in the depths of affliction. And this too shall pass. He ended his speech with another thought, however, saying, and yet let us hope it's not quite true. Let us hope rather, but by the best cultivation of the physical world beneath and around us, and the intellectual and moral world within us, we shall secure an individual, social, and political prosperity and happiness, whose course shall be onward and upward, and which, while the earth endures, shall not pass away. Close quote. So a few conclusory thoughts as we watch this, go through this, and all do our best to help ourselves and one another. One, any and all who want to politicize this event, this moment, are shameful. Now is not the time for posturing. We'd be just about in the same place if Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden were president today, possibly worse. To the degree we had resources to be where we are, even at this weak point economically, thank the gains brought us by the Trump economy up until about 2 weeks ago, and imagine where we'd be if we didn't have those gains to lose. Think about that. Be thankful we have a president, whatever his party, who's known for having a big ego. At times like this, you want someone who will raise heaven and earth to avoid systemic failure on his or her watch. 3, we have indeed been through worse unknowns. Taking on Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany, both on their territories, just coming off a Great Depression? Give me a break. I was in D.C. on 9/11, evacuated from my office a block from the White House by the Secret Service. We were all told we'd be hit again. Almost everyone knew someone who was killed or someone who knew someone who was killed. We thought we'd be hit again hard. Didn't know where. Didn't know when. Something very close to, but not quite martial law, was imposed on the streets of D.C. for the next several days. We didn't know what the enemy had. And we've become blithe about it since. Worldwide, since 2001, there have been over 36,000 terrorist attacks. In America, almost 60 other attacks. We've come back stronger in both, and we amazed ourselves after 9/11, showing we still had the stuff Winston Churchill knew we had in 1941. Do we still have it? I sure hope so. I'm not encouraged by most of what I've seen from our spring-breaking, later-aged Generation Zers. They'll need some schooling. Won't come from the generation before them, millennials. Too many holidays from history with them. So can we reclaim it, please? As we reclaim our economy in the future from China? As we reclaim our sense about socialist impulses and dictatorships? As we reclaim our sense of our own history and get back to the thing we know is what we talk about when we talk about making and keeping America great. It's that America is indeed like a gigantic boiler, as Winston Churchill said, and once lit, no power can stop it. I'm Seth. We'll be right back.